Okay, welcome back. This time on DIY Lobsterboat, I'll show you how I built the transom, which is the aft end of the boat. The forward end of the hull, the bow, is formed by the stem. How I made this stem, I showed you the last time. For this type of boat, the transom has a rake, which is a tilt, as well as a bow, which is this curve you can see here. Other than these temporary molds, which have to go eventually, the transom together with the inner stem, the stringers, the floors, the inner keel plank and shear clamps form the skeleton of the hull, if you will. What I'm gonna do now is show you how I built this thing. Let's take a look at it. With the help of crayons, I first had to trace the lofted shape and the radius of the transom from paper cutouts onto the building materials. To achieve the desired curve, I basically went back to the method you saw me using in the last video about making the inner and outer stem, which is first applying glue on the mating surfaces of several identical parts and then bending them around a prefabricated mold. For the transom, I had to build what looks like a slated frame for a bed, which you will see in a minute. For this particular boat, the designer asks for a transom radius of 21 feet. In order to draw a part of a circle, basically, with that large of a radius, you have to provide an equally large flat area for one thing. With a fixed end to attach a 21-foot long string to and a pencil at the other end and a huge sheet of paper, I was able to draw the radius. Before beginning to build the transom, I had to prepare the lofting board. The battens you see me installing made sure that I could come in with clamps later on during the glue up. Next, 2 sheets of 1/4 inch marine plywood had to be secured on the battens and sawn in half to provide the 4 pieces needed for the finished 1-inch thick transom. Next, I transferred the lofted lines as mentioned in the same manner as I did the station molds in episode 1 of this video series. After cutting as close to the line as I could, I mixed up several batches of thickened epoxy. With the epoxy spread evenly around the 3 mating surfaces, I could now place the single sheets of 1/4 inch plywood on top of each other and apply pressure with clamps and also with screws. The screws are needed because the clamps can only cover the outer edge of the sheet stack. I used many drywall screws, evenly placed around the entire surface. The main purpose of the screws, though, is that they force the stack in its entirety onto the building form beneath. More fasteners mean somewhat more work in the cleanup of the holes they leave after removing, but in order to avoid voids in the finished piece and to achieve a properly built and neatly bent shape, one has to apply pressure as evenly as possible. So here is that process of lamination in time-lapse. The last step in the shop was removing the fasteners and filling the holes with epoxy. For this application I purposely used sawdust as a filler. After sanding, coating and painting, the screw holes won't be visible at all. So this concludes this episode on how I built the transom for my 30-foot lobster boat. You saw me preparing and transferring lofted lines onto building materials. I did epoxy work and fabricated the transom as a curved and solid piece from scratch. There is still much to do before the transom finds its permanent place on the hull, but that's for a later episode. If you like what you see, I'd be happy if you liked the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have any suggestions about the content, feel free to make a comment down below. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to check out the other videos of this series.